Now that football season is officially over, we can pick our heads up and kind of see the state of things. And for me, the one thing that really got my goat this season was conference realignment. And I didn't even really realize it until I saw that the Ducks were playing a basketball game at Michigan State in conference play for the Big Ten, which is just so stupid. I mean, the idea that because college football wanted to expand their playoff and get bigger contracts for media rights, now we have UCLA basketball traveling to the Midwest every other week to play a game. Even worse, Stanford and Cal are spending half their time between January and March traveling to New York or Florida or North Carolina. I mean, this shit is crazy. Even the NBA isn't traveling like this. When you look at it through the lens of football, conference realignment kind of makes sense, but as we all knew, football is fucking up sports across the board because they wanted conference realignment. It's been accepted in so many ways that football is different than other sports. I mean, it's the only one with subdivisions within Division 1. So I've decided to start the offseason with my first idea on how to fix college football in the era of the 12-team playoff. It's called the Perfect Power 5. And what we're doing is putting 5 16-team conferences together exclusive to college football for a total of 80 teams that will make up the new top division of college football. Each conference will have 2 divisions separated geographically, and each team will play their whole division every year, as well as 2 other conference games. They will also play 3 non-conference games, and only one of those games can be played against a team from a lower division. The winner of each division will qualify for the playoff at the end of the season, along with 2 wildcard teams. The main goal of this idea is to bring back the regional element of college football that was so obviously lost in 2024, while still moving into a new era for the sport. Ideally, we can get rid of the polls and the corruption that's taken over college football and give schools a pathway to playing relevant football through the preservation of historical rivalries and a promotion-relegation system that gives growing teams a chance to reach their peak and struggling programs a chance to regroup. First, I'll run through the lineup of each Power 5 conference, and then we'll go through the promotion-relegation system as well as the playoff. So in alphabetical order, we start with the ACC, and the idea here is that in the Atlantic Coast Conference, each school must be in a state with an Atlantic coastline. In the Northern Division, we have Army, Boston College, Syracuse, Virginia, Virginia Tech, Maryland, Rutgers, and Navy. In the South, we have Miami, Florida State, NC State, Clemson, Duke, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Wake Forest. For each conference, I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown about what happened with their conference from their current state. For the ACC, they added Army, Navy, Maryland, Rutgers, and South Carolina. They lost Cal, Stanford, SMU, Pitt, Louisville, and Georgia Tech. The teams that moved from a Group of 5 conference to a Power 5 conference were Army and Navy. Some of the contenders to move up were Coastal Carolina and App State, but Army and Navy brought more cachet due to their historical college football programs, the fact that they are both military academies, and we wanted a little bit of north-south balance as this is one of the most spread out geographically of all the conferences. Some notes on the lineup that we have here. I did play around with Miami and Florida State going to the SEC or Florida and UCF coming to the ACC, but neither really made sense for the balance of power as far as where the programs are at and geographically what that would look like. So Florida is the only state that is a split state. In every other state, if there's programs in a Power 5 conference, they will be in the same conference. But Florida is a special occasion because of the geographical challenges with the South and the Southeast. Moving on to the Big 12, and the idea here is that we wanted the Big 8 and the Southwest Conference as much as we can to be the main tenets of this, and then including everything kind of in the Texas and Plains area to keep the Big 12 into what I knew growing up as that geographical center of the country. For the Northern Division, we have Colorado, Kansas, Kansas State, Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Texas Tech. For the South, we have Baylor, SMU, Sam Houston, TCU, Texas, Texas A&M, Houston, and UTSA. In this process, the Big 12 added Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, SMU, Sam Houston, Texas, Texas A&M, and UTSA. They lost Arizona, Arizona State, BYU, Cincinnati, Utah, Iowa State, West Virginia, and UCF. The 2 teams that moved up from Group of 5 to Power 5 are Sam Houston and UTSA. The contenders to move up were every other Texas program in the FBS. So that includes Rice, Texas State, North Texas, and UTEP. And we also looked at Tulsa. But really, Sam Houston's real strong start to their life in the FBS over the last couple years, and UTSA's history plus really their location in San Antonio just made for a much stronger case for inclusion in the Power 5. Although Rice was a part of the Southwest Conference, they just really haven't been doing anything in a while, so that's why we decided to go with the two, Sam Houston and UTSA, to move up. A few notes here is that the Big 12 brings back 5 former members from their strength in the 2000s, with Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas, and Texas A&M all coming back to the Big 12. And that's second only to the Pac-12, who basically has to re-add everybody to become a power conference again. They also have many programs in their geographical range that could be looking to be promoted in the coming years. So that's maybe a conference that could be moving a lot more than other conferences, depending on how it works. Moving on to the Big Ten, and this one was a little more simple just because it's already kind of put together. We went for the Midwest plus Pennsylvania and West Virginia is kind of the geographical range here. The Northern Division is Illinois, Iowa, Iowa State, Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Northwestern, Wisconsin. The South is Cincinnati, Indiana, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State, Pittsburgh, Purdue, and West Virginia. In this process, the Big Ten added Iowa State, Cincinnati, Notre Dame, Pitt, and West Virginia. They lost Nebraska, Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, Rutgers, and Maryland. The team that moved up is Notre Dame, although independent to in a conference might just be a lateral move, but that's the one team that would have moved up. The contenders to move up, there was really none. The Midwest is full of football programs, much like the South, but there's a clear hierarchy, more so than anywhere else, between what is a Big Ten team and what is a MAC team. So that will obviously be shaken out through that promotion relegation system, but it could very well work out that nobody moves up from the MAC, just given how competitive that is within itself and how competitive the Big Ten is within itself. A note here is that Purdue was one of the strongest contenders to be dropped out of a power conference. No team got dropped out of a power conference, but Purdue was one of the highest contenders given their recent struggles and being the worst team in the FBS last year, or the worst Power 5 team or Power 4 team in the country last year. But given their history and the size of their program, I mean, they got one of the bigger stadiums in the country, that saved them to keep them up. And like I said, that split between what is a Big Ten team, what is a MAC team, that saved them as well. All right, kind of like I said, one of the things that prompted this, the Pac-12, we're bringing them back. And the Pac-12, geographically, we're just looking west of the Rockies. The Northern Division, Boise State, California, Fresno State, Oregon, Oregon State, Stanford, Washington, Washington State. The South, Arizona, Arizona State, BYU, UCLA, UNLV, USC, Utah, and Utah State. In this process, the Pac-12 added everyone besides Oregon State and Washington State, and they lost no one because they only had 2 member conferences. I know there was some teams that are already going to be coming in 2026, but we wanted to take it from the state of right now, so that's what we're looking at. The teams that moved up, Boise State, Fresno State, UNLV, and Utah State. The contenders to move up were San Diego State, San Jose State, Colorado State, and Nevada. Really everybody in the Mountain West, and especially the teams that has signed on to be in the Pac-12 come 2026. UNLV and Utah State really were the ones that were on the edge with those other teams, but they ultimately won out due to the recent success, historical rivalries in Utah State's case, and the trajectory of the programs in UNLV's case. Again, like the UTSA thing, they're playing in Vegas. San Diego State might have an argument for that, but San Jose State, Colorado State, Nevada, they don't have that same cachet. Vegas is one of the fastest growing sports cities in the U.S. To note, only 25 of the 134 FBS teams play west of Texas. So pickings are the most slim when we're looking at making the Western Conference. That fact saved Cal from dropping down. Much like Purdue, they were one of the highest contenders to be dropped from a Power 5 conference. They haven't been in the top 25. They haven't finished in the top 25 of the AP poll since 2006. But they have been bowl eligible for the past 2 seasons. That along with the slim pickings in the West Coast, saved them to be in the actual Pac-12 conference. But the Mountain West has a ton of contenders. So if Cal slips up or any of the teams slip up, there are teams ready to take their place in a promotion situation. By the way, I just showed this off. My wife embroidered this for me. It's an amazing shirt, amazing sweatshirt. We might be looking at putting out some embroidery sweatshirts in the near future, so let me know if you'd be interested in that. Okay, to the last of the Power Five, we're looking at the SEC, and geographically it's simple. We're just looking at the true South. So in the East Division, we have Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Kentucky, Louisville, and UCF. In the West, we have Arkansas, LSU, Memphis, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Tulane, and Vanderbilt. In this process, the SEC added Georgia Tech, Louisville, UCF, Memphis, and Tulane. They lost Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M, and South Carolina. The two teams that moved up are Memphis and Tulane. Some of the contenders to move up were Arkansas State, UAB, USF. Really, there are tons of programs in the South, but Memphis has a strong history of dominating their conference, and Tulane won the Cotton Bowl back in 2022 against USC, which is one of the more impressive New Year's Six bowl wins in recent memory. And they were a former member of the SEC up until 1966. So reinstituting their membership goes along with one of our stated goals, which is to bring back historical rivalries and regional history in college football. To note, again, a lot of programs in the South, but there's a pretty obvious line between what's an SEC team and the Sun Belt or the American conferences. So being promoted into the SEC might be one of the harder tasks, but Tulane, Memphis, and Vanderbilt were all kind of on the cusp there. Vanderbilt has a strong history in the SEC, so obviously they had to be in the first version of what we got going on here. But if any of those teams start to slip up in their new SEC conference, or Vanderbilt just slips up as they tend to do, there may be an opening for the other kind of lower down Southern Conference teams to move up into the SEC. So that's 80 teams. We have the top division of college football set, but that leaves us with 54 FBS teams that will not be in the top end of college football. What we're going to do with those teams is we're going to split them into 5 conferences. 3 of those conferences will be 10-team conferences, and 2 will be 12-team conferences. Those conferences will serve as secondary conferences to the Power 5. What that means is if you are in the Pac-12, the secondary conference is the Mountain West. So if you are going to be promoted from the Mountain West, you have to go to the Pac-12. If you'll be demoted from the Pac-12, you must go to the Mountain West, and so on and so forth. You can see those conferences on the list I have on the screen here with their corresponding power conference for promotion, relegation purposes. In order to be promoted, a school from the group of 5 will need to win 3 straight conference championships and will take the worst team spot in the corresponding power conference the year that they win their 3rd straight conference championship. To be demoted, a school from the Power 5 conference will need to win 4 or less games in 3 straight seasons and will be dropped in favor of the conference champion in the corresponding group of 5 conference the season that they lose for the 3rd straight season, the season that they win 4 or less games for the 3rd time. If 2 teams qualify to be relegated, then both conference championship game participants from the corresponding group of 5 conference will be promoted. No more than 2 teams can be promoted/relegated in a given year. If more than 3 teams qualify to be relegated, which seems highly unlikely, there will be tiebreakers starting with head-to-head, conference win percentage, and so on if that situation arises. Divisions can be rearranged when necessary for geographical reasons in a promotion relegation situation. Okay, I know that's a lot of information, so if you have any questions, leave it in the comments below. I'll get back to you. I answer all my comments as long as you're not being mean to me. Now for the playoff. Each Power 5 division champion will qualify for the playoff, and there will be 2 wildcard spots. So what that means is if you make it to your conference championship game, you're in the playoff. If you win your conference championship game, then you're in consideration for the top 4 seeds. The tiebreakers for that are starting with head-to-head. Second will be record against other playoff teams. And then the final one is win percentage against teams that you've beaten. That same tiebreaker will be how we decide what non-conference championship game participant teams will go into the 4-team playoff to decide the 2 wildcard teams. So head-to-head, then record against playoff teams, and then win percentage of teams they've beaten. The winner and the runner-up of the 4-team wildcard playoff will then get the 11th and 12th seeds. The conference champions will go 1 through 5. Again, seeding decided by the tiebreakers. 6 through 10 will then be the conference champions runner-up decided by the same tiebreakers, going 6 through 10. As far as locations, the 4-team wildcard playoff will be played at traditional New Year's Six bowl games, as well as the 3 first-round games that don't include a conference champion. It'll be the rotating New Year's Six bowls, and then the championship will be chosen the same way it's chosen now. Just make a deal with whatever city, although we should be starting to make deals with more western and northern cities, LA, Las Vegas, fucking put them in the Ford Field, put them in the fucking Viking Stadium. Not everything has to be in the South. All other games will be home games for the higher seed hosting the home game, including the 5th seed, the last place conference champion. Their first round game will be a home game. We want to prioritize conference champions. All teams will then be reseeded after each round. So, for instance, if the 5th seed ends up losing to the 12th seed, then the 1st seed will play the 12th seed in the second round. They won't just automatically play the winner of the 8-9 game like it was this year. A lot of information, but to boil it down, the goal of the playoff is to incentivize big non-conference games scheduled early in the season or really any time throughout the regular season, and to make each regular season game matter. Every loss can knock you out of the playoff because we have specific rules that say whether you're in or whether you're not. It's not about the human element, the polls. It's about these specific rankings. But because we look at percentage and we look at beating playoff teams, a big win can improve your seed and it can make your run in the playoff a much easier time. It could also save you in the wild card scenario. If you have a trip up like Ohio State, for example, but they had big wins at Penn State, they had big wins at Indiana, or a big non-conference win if they happen to have one, that could save you and get you into the wild card playoff, which then could put you on a run, a much more difficult run, because we want to make sure that you're winning games. That's the point of it. We're putting big conferences together that should be balanced. You need to win games to get in the playoff. But if you happen to trip up, there is another path. You just got to play more games and you got to play better. But like I said, this is the first of many ideas that I'll be presenting you this offseason with conference realignment and just ideas about how sports could look differently from a top-down level. Sports nerd stuff. So if you're into that, make sure that you like and subscribe. We're looking a lot at college football, NFL. The NBA definitely could do some changes. The MLB could use some changes. So we're going to look at ideas to shake up those leagues and move them into a new age. This one specifically is trying to bridge the past and the future to make the best college football we can for the present. Let me know what you think. Like I said, leave any questions you have in the comments. Leave your opinions in the comments. Who's the best conference here? Who is in danger of being demoted? Who is most likely to get promoted first? Who did I leave out that should have been in the power conferences? Who did I put in that shouldn't be in there? And where did I miss as far as the rules or any of the setup that here, or any notes that you want to leave as well? Just make sure you put it all into the comments. Thanks for watching that video. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and if you've made it this far, definitely leave a comment. If you want to see more of my videos, over here, I've got my talk about the college football playoff, my most popular video on the college football playoff here. Up here, I've got my most popular video that also talks about conference realignment and the SEC. Other than that, you can go ahead and subscribe right there, and we'll catch you next time. See ya!